Welcome to the Spiritual Sweet Spot, a place where you can rejuvenate your soul. Hosted by author M.B. Moses. This is a safe space for all. Disclaimer, please be advised that the following content may contain sensitive information. We kindly request listeners to proceed with caution and exercise discretion when engaging with this material. While every effort has been made to provide accurate and responsible information, this content is intended for informational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice or guidance. The views and opinions expressed in this material may not necessarily reflect those of the hosting platform and its affiliates. Listeners are encouraged to verify any information independently and consult with relevant experts or authorities for specific concerns or inquiries. By listening to this content, you acknowledge that you are doing so at your own risk and agree to hold harmless both the content creator and the hosting platform from any potential consequences or liabilities arising from the use or interpretation of this information. Please remember that sensitive topics can elicit emotional reactions, and it is essential to prioritize self-care and seek support if needed. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back, family. I'm so excited that you're able to join me once again on Decoding Dreams podcast. I am excited to continue to explore our conversation at hand, which is unleashing limited beliefs for manifesting mastery. We are now focusing on part 3, and if you have not listened to part 1 and part 2, I encourage you to pause and rewind. Pause and go find part 1 and part 2. It's still here on the same podcast. We have recorded and uploaded those parts, and so that you can kind of get acclimated to where we are in part 3. However, I should also say you can pick up from here. No pressure. All right, so I'm excited to talk about part 3. Part 3 is explore the origins of limited beliefs. Exploring the origins of limiting beliefs can provide valuable insights into understanding how and why they are formed. So we're going to talk about some approaches to exploring the origins of limited beliefs. Family, I hope that this podcast finds you and your loved ones doing well, sending light and love your way. Taking a moment to thank you all, global audiences, local audiences. Thank you so much for tuning in to the podcast. And above all, thank you so much for downloading the podcast episodes. You all are so amazing. You are so amazing. I feel the energy every single time. You know, sometimes in life, we do things that Spirit says to do. You go forward in a blind faith and start where you start, never knowing and understanding sometimes how it's going to morph. So I thank you all so much for being a part of my journey and for being a part of this podcast, because truly when this podcast was formed, it was formed from a person that was taking a sabbatical in life, away from work, trying to explore my true self, trying to separate myself from the ideologies that I held onto, and trying to rediscover who it was that I truly am and who it is that I truly am. So I say all of that to say thank you so much. You all are so awesome. Let's get into it. Let us get into it. Let us not waste not another second. December is my favorite spirit month. I know, sidebar. It is. I love the Christmas spirit. It's so magical. And then finally, I'm in a place where it snows, right? Because growing up in Zimbabwe, all I could remember was watching reruns, or I should say replaying, right? Replaying Home Alone. It was one of my favorite movies. And the Home Alone movie was one of the only eyes I had as a child into America. I, as a child, thought that this was America, like the big Home Alone house, the snow, all the theme around it, right? And then we moved to America and we live in Southern California in the valley where there's no snow. I'm like, wait a minute now. America's trying to jip me off my American experience. Like, when I watch Home Alone, unbeknownst to me, I think, what was it, centered in Cincinnati or something? Heck, I didn't know. I just felt like, as a kid, that America was like this one big America. Like, I didn't know there were states. I just literally thought America is just this one big pot. Just, boom, America. I was young. It was in my mind, as a child's mind. Speaking of child, let's get into it. Let's us explore the origins of limited beliefs. Let's talk about childhood experiences, right? Speaking of child, let us talk about childhood experiences as we explore origins. Some of these bullet points might sound a little bit familiar from the other conversations we've had in part 1 and part 2. So we want to explore the origins of limiting beliefs. Family, for those that are joining us right now in part 3, we are unpacking limiting beliefs, getting to understand them so that we can be able to deal with limiting beliefs, so that we can unleash the limited beliefs in our lives, so that we can attain manifesting mastery. So let's look at childhood experiences as one of the examples for exploring the origins of limiting or limited beliefs. Let us reflect on our upbringing and experiences during childhood, right? Let us identify any influential events, messages, or interactions that may have shaped our beliefs. For those of you that have been tuning in since part 1, you can recall that I have spoken about my childhood. Today I spoke about the fun part, like, where honestly, I think, like, one of the things I always say, a child's mind is so innocent and pure at heart. Just as an adult looking back, I'm like, how would I have ever just thought America was just one thing? Like Home Alone, that's America. But I guess it's likened to when I started high school in Southern California. When we moved here, folks used to always ask me about Africa. So I guess it's the same analogy where Discovery Channel was, showing the different parts of Africa, but not the suburbs or the city. So a lot of peers at that time had so many questions for me about my pet lions, pet elephants, and all other things. So I guess it's kind of like, you look at it at both perspectives. As children, our minds really do take an adventurous exploration, I should say, exploration. So let's look at the childhood. What is it in your childhood, if you could reach back into your memory bank and say, hey, I feel like this was one of the moments in life that you can identify that were influential events that perhaps changed the way you think about life, perhaps sometimes, and as we talked about in part 1 and part 2, that remember, these things are not us as adults looking back and thinking, oh, that's what it was. Most of these things were events and moments and times that happened that subconsciously stayed within our subconscious. So we're not consciously acting a certain way. We're not consciously moving a certain way in a conscious state of knowing what it is that we're doing that is limiting belief. But because of how things, our environment, our childhood shaped us, then the outcome, the results, the residue from that is influencing now our patterns, our livelihood, who we are today. What are some of the things, if you look back, that you can identify in your childhood experiences? I'll put myself out there, just like I did for part 1, part 2. For those that have been following these parts, this will sound familiar. One of the things that I can dig back on is when I was in primary school. I've talked about my primary school experiences. And if you are new to this podcast and you don't have a primary school system. Primary school is in relation to junior high and elementary school in the United States of America being the same. So grade 1 to grade 7 was primary school for us. And so in my early formative years of that, I want to say sensitive formative years as a child, I was placed in a class, a category, because we had a class system where the smartest kids would be in a certain class bracket. I think they identified them per color. My memory fades me there, but I want to say like the smartest kids were like in grade 4 green, sub-smart, grade 4 yellow, could do better, grade 4 orange, and then kids like myself, we were placed continuously throughout our educational system in primary school in what can be consistent with here in the Western world as a special ed class for special education. However, in our primary school system, our class with the children, we were just written off as the children that didn't want to learn or can't learn, had more than difficulties in learning. At that moment as a child, I could have, if you interviewed me at that moment as a child, I wouldn't have been able to articulate. I didn't know what was going on. I just knew I reported to a class. I knew it was the last class, most of my primary school. And we knew that we got stuff like free milk, you know what I mean? I don't know, you know, I just show up, what's up, you know what I mean? Show up, what's up? Why is it just a few of us in this class? But this is where it was, right? So this is the example. I wasn't in a conscious state of saying, oh my gosh, I'm doing so bad, I'm doing so horrible, I need to step it up and, you know, get to the other classes and be motivated, to the higher classes and be motivated about it. And I've spoken about this in part 1 and part 2, because in this specific analogy for myself, we're looking at societal influence, meaning that's the structure of the system that I was raised in. And not only that, we then pivot to look at the system around my childhood, my family, my environment. So here it is as a child, floating, just showing up, because I'm just supposed to show up. However, I never ever growing up had anyone in my circle of adult influences really hype up what school was about. How was your day at school? What you doing at school? What are you learning? Homework. It was that moment I went without doing my homework, because I had no concept. I had no concept of school. I just literally, in my earliest memories, remember just showing up with a book bag. Period. That's it. And then I remember one time I just didn't do homework. There was no reinforcement. There was no consequences of, you're not doing your homework, you know, so therefore, you know, it was just like, so in a sense, it was like we were in this class. No one really cared about our education because we were already written off as the group of kids that were, air quotes, and not so palatable in today's society, but the slow group of kids, like the slow folk, like special ed, like these kids don't want to learn. No, forget the earlier system, forget the later systems we have today, right? Where we have therapists and psychologists that break it down, where they understand that children have different learning curves or children receive things differently. Forget all of that. Forget the environment that you're coming from. In my situation, up until I was about 12 or 13 years, and that would have been after primary school, and rightfully so, is when I kind of started excelling, which started off in high school, and especially when we moved to the West. But pause on that moment. So my environment, forget what the environment is that we're coming from, forget what our environment looks like that we're coming from. Up until 12 or 13, I existed in complete chaos, mayhem, discourse, disorder, violence, psychological abuse, emotional abuse, and not to add physical abuse. So these were not favorable environmental situation, I should say. I'm trying to grasp for the word, right? It was not so conducive. So most times we would go to sleep and be awakened at midnight to thuds, thunderous, roaring sounds. And it's the adults in our lives embroiled in a physical fight. It was the fear of going to school and coming back home and not knowing who's going to be alive and who has killed who. It was the fear of when you came back from school, there she was, one of my most memories that are still stuck in my mind. We had a maid, a live-in maid, and so coming back from school, she's on her knees mopping up what's evident, blood stains on the floor, splattered blood stains on the wall, not understanding which one of the adults in our lives is gone. That's somebody's blood, because that's how volatile the environment was. And so these are not excuses, these are not justifications. You're learning from an adult who is learning to live through therapy and through right resources, to live and understand about life itself, right? I have afforded the adults in my life grace because I'm an adult now. So I'm seeing things, right? One of the best things I could have done for myself is understand that they too are humans. They too are not perfect people. They too operated from a place where they thought they knew better, but that's their better. So we get that out the way, because we live in a society that's like, oh my gosh, here she goes castigating her parents. Her parents did everything they could do. Oh my gosh. But let's just keep it real, right? Let's just keep it real. Because that's a part of about it sometimes where I'm like, I'm so over the gaslighting. We should not deny people's experiences. And that's why I guess maybe the passionate writer in me always emerges, because I could say it all on paper and pen. We should not deny those experiences. They have shaped and molded us to who we are today. So, and also till 12 and 13, so we're talking about substance abuse, you know, alcoholics, fights, physical fights, verbal fights, psychological fights. As a child, I felt least seen, but though I was embroiled in the physical abuse part as well, never understanding why I was getting the brunt of it. I would get whooped to the point where I would have welts, bleeding welts on my open arms, leather belts. Up to today, I cannot stand to really look at a belt, leather belt, or anything of that sort. And these would be marks that would also be, by the way, disclaimer, I should put a disclaimer at the start of this. This is very deep. For those that have sensory, or, you know, if it's a little bit too much, we're going really deep. So here it is, bruised as a little girl, with marks all over my back, barely could sit down for days. And so you'd wonder also, the thing that would resonate with me and growing up I'd blame myself for everything, because when I got beat, it was never you didn't take out the trash on time. It was just an adult was taking out their anger on me. I never did anything but choose to exist as a child, and as a child I was so confused. Even as an adult, the things that I could tell you my triggers right now is people that accuse me of something I didn't do, because that's when I was getting beat for things that I didn't do. I remember one incident, my mother's mother, who I despised as a child, because every time I saw her, I knew that doom and mayhem and discord and torture was coming my way. She had my mother's ear in most parts. So the adults in my life would be off at work, come back, my mom would be back by like before 5 or so. And what I did as a child in those early formative stages, like I mentioned in part 1 and part 2, was sports were one of the things that really helped me. In primary school, sports were compulsory, meaning that everyone that had functional limbs had to partake in a sport. It wasn't an ask, it was you have to pick a sport. So that really helped me in primary school. And so what happened was we would do our academics earlier on, and then right after we would do our elected sports. And I used to ride my bicycle to school, my little BMX, and then I would ride my BMX back home. Sometimes I would walk. Sometimes when my dad dropped me off at school, I would walk back home. In hindsight, 2020, I was like, dang it, I was a little lonely child, wasn't I? I'll be walking all back home and riding by myself. So when my mother's mother, I'm not sure what her quandary was with me or what her issue was with me, but when she came to town, she would falsify information when my mother got home. My mother never asked me and said, hey, grandma told me da 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 da. Mind you, primary school is grade 1 to grade 7. You leave primary school at about 12. High school started like at 13. So I want to say when I started high school, about 13 and above, things subsided a little bit. So she never was one of those people that asked, hey, I heard da 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 da. She would just, what I would remember the most and feared the most, because I was literally a kid. I couldn't tell you what children these days are doing, but I was still the girl. Listen, I was like playing with Barbie dolls, I think, all the way through primary school. Like, listen, don't play. And so that's how much of a kid I was. And so I remember one time, among many memories, coming home, and she told me, she said, and what happened was my mother would go into her bedroom, and then she would call you from her bedroom. As children, we shouldn't have had such a joke, but with my older brother and I, we would say we're being summoned to the court, because we knew that nothing good came from being called into her bedroom. And so she would call, and I would go, but I would know where my fate was. She would, when I would walk inside that bedroom, she would close the door, lock the door. These were doors different from the Western doors, really, where it required a key, you know, not just a knob turn, but the key. She would turn the key, take out the key from the door. She would place the key in her bra, and she would tell me to pick a belt from their closet. Majority of those belts that were in their closet were my dad's leather belts. So as a child, I would think, you know, perhaps if I picked the smallest, skinniest belt, it wouldn't hurt, but they hurt the same. So I would get the belt. But as I proceeded to go get the belt in her closet, I would ask why. Why? Why? She proceeded with such rage-filled eyes that I still see today and tell me, get the belt. My heart would beat so fast, I was scared. There was nobody there to save me. Excuse me. So I would get it. Give it to her. I always remember feeling so powerless because She was an adult, and and I remember my tiny wrist. She would grab me by my little tiny wrist, like her hand would just latch all around my little tiny wrist and yank me. And she'd proceed to hit me with the belt. I'm jumping. Her grip was so strong, I could not escape her grip. I'm begging for mercy and trying to understand was my story as a child. I say, Mom, why? Tears are rolling. The pain, the whips as they touched my skin. I would look at her and beg for my life and beg to say, I would just say, I'm sorry. Because in my mind, if I just said, I'm sorry, it'll be over. If I said, sorry, please, sorry. And even though I'd say sorry, but I didn't know what I was apologizing for. But I felt like maybe if I just said sorry, it'll just end it all. I just wanted the pain to stop. So this would go on for so many moments and parts in my childhood, where I was never given an explanation to the fabrication of lies. It was only one moment where she said, like, Grandma told me, and this would happen when my grandma there or my grandma not there. And then one moment she said, oh, Grandma told me you came home. So here's the thing. My mother's mother, our grandmothers were legitimately from the village. Like, now we can attribute to Discovery Channel. Shout out to Discovery Channel on that. Like, huts, no technology, no electricity, no nothing, right? And so they didn't have a concept of time. With that came illiteracy. So they didn't have like, oh, she came home at 5 or 4. Like, they were like literally like the sun, right? But when I rode back home and I wasn't home, she would tell my mother, which I still don't understand up to this day why she fabricated. I'm like, what the heck was your deal? Like, why you didn't like me? Like, like, listen, as an adult, I'm understanding that it was not me, it was all on them. But still, you're still this big child inside. Still, I'm still this big child inside that needs, like, sometimes answers like, what the heck, what I do to you at a tender age? But here it is. So she had told my mother that I came home and the sun had set and all this other stuff. I was with boys. You know, as an adult, I'm like, how y'all know all of this stuff? And then that's what I was saying. Like I was such a kid playing with Barbie dolls for, like, listen, till like before I went to high school. So boys was far from my imagination. Boys was far from what I wanted. Sports was really where I was. It was my escape as a child. It was the only thing that I would be good at. Swimming, relay, hurdles. That was like, I could excel in those. That's where I would be in teams. We would play competitively and I would feel a worth. So here it was. Those are one of the moments that I remember. So, but just to give you an example, so most of this stuff was fabricated. So as a child, here it is, and then I get whooped, and no matter how much I try to wiggle out of her tight grip, I could never. I would see her seething. I would see the smirk on her face. I would feel the hate within her soul and her heart, and I was still confused. And even up to this day, sometimes, I don't care how much therapy you go through, for me, it's like, how does a mother bring a child into this world and have the most hate or anger towards them? It's still something I still personally grapple with. So here it was. After those sessions, I would be sent out. Couldn't sit on my back. I couldn't do anything. Crying. Every time when this happened, my father was not home. I know that if my father was home, he would have stopped it, because my father has never put his hands on us, and he wasn't the type. But as an adult now, also understanding their history on how things started, I do have slight compassion, but I'm not going to excuse the behavior. I just do have slight compassion in the fact that I see that this was a woman, a wife, that was hurt, disgruntled, whatever her issues was. Granted, she shouldn't have been taking it out on her kids at all, but she did, and that in turn also set the discourse for my life and set a tone for my life. So But so these moments, because I know if my father was there, he would have helped, right? The person that tried to speak out in some of these sessions were the maid that we had, but this was her employer, so she could only go as far as to try and help me. She, in a sense, she was an angel. She was my earthbound angel who would try to defy the odds and try to argue her down when I would get cold. Sometimes into her room, she would try to argue my mom down, like, no, she was here and all this other stuff, try to really stand in the gap for me. She was my earthbound angel. So, so we're talking about exploring the origins of limited beliefs or limiting beliefs. I wanted to talk about this really to try and help someone out. And as we explore the childhood experiences, I could tell you that for myself, as an example, what ended up happening. So societally, I was cast off into a category in school for kids that don't want to learn, have special learning needs, unbeknownst to everyone else, the mayhem, the chaos, everything I went through. These marks, skin, open skin wounds from the lashes were the worst marks. On my wrist, I still have some marks. Sometimes my maid, after the fact, would use cold towels to wipe me down, or pat me down, I should say. So anyways, let's continue. So how did this shape me later on in life? So in the moment of all of this happening, right, it's not enough to say I was consciously thinking, oh, this is happening, or oh, I'm in the last class, or so here's a double whammy. Societal has put me in the last class. There's so much going on at home. So as a child growing up, in my messaging, the seeds that have taken root in my soul is that, okay, I'm not smart, I'm not intelligent, I could never understand academia. And then the other part is also that, you know, I am this outcast child, or this person that no one ever believes what I'm saying, no one ever wants to hear my side of the story. All kinds of things shape me from that moment and produce this person now that navigates the world, having to over explain myself because I feel like people gonna feel that I'm, you know, lying, which I wasn't, but I didn't want to be put in a category where someone would assume or think a certain way, right? So it's all kinds of things that stem from all of that treatment, and things that would trigger me even into relationships, trying to form healthy relationships. For instance, heck, my husband would tell you, when we first started dating, and he would try to give innocent suggestion, right? Because I would tell him about a situation, and then you would say, well, what did, like, he would say something like, let's say, this is an example. I'm trying to give a situation that happened, running down a situation. Then he would want to know about me, but at that moment I took it as, which was happening throughout my other relationships, like you say, so, but you know, how did you kind of come off? Like, how did it get here in terms of how did you come off? And I would hear it as he's saying, what did I do? Remember, that's that seed from childhood where I was beat for things I didn't do. So then I would lash out. Like, what do you mean? What did I do? I didn't do anything. I was just, you know, because now I realized that was a trigger. Even in conversations and so forth, that I carried this subconsciously And it's not what people are saying. It's not what it's what I'm hearing. It's not what people are saying, but it was what I was hearing when certain situations came about, right? So it'll be like I was on the defense mode, or anytime somebody say, oh, well, how did you da da da, and I receive it as you're saying that I did it, like I'm guilty for it, or I'm the one that caused it, because all my life as a little child, this is what was happening. I was getting beat for things that I didn't do. And I'm not here to toot my own horn, but I think I've done and I'm continue to do the work. The journey to discover your true self, who I authentically am, in most of these things is looking yourself in the eye and seeing yourself for who you are. And I could tell you by now that in those formative stages, I was a decent kid, right? I was not the kid that was like attitude-y. I have role played all this in my mind for the consequences that will befall me in terms of being beaten, but that was not my nature. So I was just kind of the kid that got dropped off at school, went back home, did the sports, went back home, and did it again the next day. So, but later on in life, also now in high school, I became a different type of person. Definitely a bad person. Not bad as in bad, but bad habits. Bad, what do you call it? A misguided teen, right? I started just rebelling, doing whatever I really wanted, for real. I was like, F all of that stuff. We already here. I might as well go out of this world with a big bang. And so I didn't got the lashes for it already. You know what I'm saying? Just out here wilding out. But so let's talk about it. We're exploring the origins of limiting beliefs and limited beliefs, and I apologize, the information I've disclosed may be heavy for some. And so we're looking at the childhood experiences, how they have shaped you. Is there a moment in time in your life where you could look at your adult behavior, or some moments in your life where you're like, oh my gosh, I could see how that's intertwined in my childhood experiences, whether it was societal. Perhaps for you it wasn't environmental. Perhaps for you it wasn't your home. Perhaps for you it was societal. Perhaps for you it was something else. So is there a moment or some certain messaging, perhaps? Sometimes it doesn't always have to be at home, right? Maybe it's the adults in your life in school that talk negatively upon your life. Maybe your coach, maybe people that you thought were influential, that were influential adults. Perhaps they sowed seeds within your soul that were distasteful and are also now showing their residue and essence in your life as this energy in the way you are who you are in terms of the origin of your limiting beliefs. Take a deep dive, take a moment. This stuff is hard to really, it reminds me very much of doing shadow work. Shadow work consists of really being brutally honest with yourself, looking yourself in the soul. I had to do the work, and that's one of the revelations that I found out, was that I noticed that I would get triggered off of things that were based off in my childhood. Most of my adult life, I try to live with integrity, try to be the most truthful human version of myself. So therefore, every time when somebody tries to put me in a earlier on in this discovery, I realized what my triggers were. Like, I need to stop and I need to hear what people are saying. And I need to ask for clarification before I get triggered in thinking that they are blaming me or accusing me of something that I did not do, right? So it takes work, no doubt. So let's talk about, and then also some of these things shaped my life into where I was very insecure. My older brother has always been there for me, especially in, of course, our adult years, right? So he would be the one to tell me I'm very smart, you got this, you do these things so naturally, and he would be the one to really fill me with positive highlights, and my siblings, my sisters and so forth, right? But even as that, I still had it between you and I still have and had a hard time seeing it, even with all the signs showing me the certifications, the great grades with academia, the achievements, the accomplishments, the certificates I'm looking at right above me here in my office, or even all of that stuff. I always have this, and I'm learning. That's why we're here. I'm not going to be sitting over on here talking like I'm coming off the Jesus Christ mountain. I am learning to receive and absorb what I truly deserve. It's, it's a moment. I mean, these are things some of us that have had these exposures in childhood will continually have to do the work. I'm learning to receive compliments. I'm learning to receive accolades. I'm learning to receive all of this stuff because my messaging to myself and the things that had been embedded within my soul and my heart was that I wasn't good enough, that I'm a liar, that, I was blamed for everything that I didn't do. And so I'm learning. So perhaps like you, what is it you're also learning? And also I had moments of self-doubt. Doubting myself, doubting my projects. Heck, listen, I have submitted manuscripts, gotten great reviews on my manuscripts. I hold on to them because I still doubt my writing. I'm like, they're just being nice. They're just saying it to be nice. That's part of their job. Like, she's an editor, so clearly she's gonna give great reviews. But I'm learning on receiving it like, no, this is good. This is good. Like the manuscript that concluded, I was really humbled. This was an independent editor who dubbed me to be on the same writing style and great written work as Toni Morrison and Lord. And I'm like, she's just trying to be nice. Like, look at her. So some of these doubts too have caused me to really kind of procrastinate in terms of like these projects that have had these amazing reviews should have been published, should be out here. But I'm just like, people are being nice. I see the reviews of my novel and I'm just like, people are being nice. And I'm not be keeping it 100% with y'all. I want to learn and be in a space where I get to just really accepting it, completely receiving it and accepting it, and not thinking that they're being nice or they're being too kind, right? So this is work that I'm continually working on. That's why this podcast was created. That's why this is the journey to my true self, because I'm still discovering a lot of things, still trying to learn. So it wasn't until I was 33. Some of y'all think about the ages, think about the things, think about what has affected you in your childhood as you grow up. See how that correlates or links up with your limited beliefs or limiting beliefs, right? Because it wasn't until I was 33 years old that I also further realized, hey, nobody has ever told me they were proud of me. Nobody has ever supported. Listen, it wasn't until I got my husband, who is amazing. This is the first time in my entire life that I would be supported by someone, even with him, just as cute and positive as he is. I'm just like, really? Because I'm not so used to people celebrating me and, oh, you did that, high five. But that's who he is. So at first it was just kind of like, oh, okay, calm down, chill out, it's all good. Just minimizing achievements, accomplishments, and stuff like that. But now with him, though, I'm at this point where I'm like, oh, wow, really, it's sincerity. He really, you could just see how geeked he is. He just gets excited for every little milestone, every little endeavor. That's the support I never had in my entire life. I didn't know what support looked like. Therefore, I couldn't give support, right? So realizing as well, with my limiting beliefs, realizing that until I was 33, that no one had ever really celebrated my accomplishments, my achievements. And when I say no one, I'm talking about the family members, my adults in my life, people in my familial ecosystem. So I challenge myself to see people, to tell them that I'm proud of them, because that makes me feel good, right? To encourage people, because nobody ever encouraged me up until my husband. So that makes me feel good, further good as well. It's as if I'm giving back to that little girl that never got all of that stuff. And all of that stuff really feeds me pleasantly. It makes me feel really good. So sidebar, get you somebody that love you, that supports you, that sees you. Just saying. It makes a big difference. I had an epiphany not too long ago. And it wasn't the reason why I got married to my husband. It was a lot of great qualities, but it hit me when Spirit finally showed me in this epiphany that through my husband I'm getting everything I never got as a child. But that wasn't like, when we started dating and got married, wasn't like, oh, this is my father's system, my mother's system I never had. No, it just like literally hit me like, oh my gosh, all of that stuff that was deprived and lacking is cocooned in this person. It was just an epiphany. I was like, oh, okay. All the praise, all the admiration, no matter what it is. I grew up in a moment where I was afraid to express my dreams, afraid to express who I want. Even with my writing, it was always secretive because also the adults in my life would have rather me be a doctor, would have rather me do something else like writing. Where's that going to take you, right? So I was used to being knocked down for the things that I wanted to endeavor, which then created a personality that was also kind of secretive where I couldn't share what it is that I was doing, and perhaps that also created further doubt in like, well, with all this writing, where's it going? And also further putting doubts because I knew that the immediate ecosystem that I came from was not understanding, very judgmental about the direction. They were the type of people that would rather see you be the doctor like their friends' kids are doctors, or be the lawyer like their friends' kids, or be a registered nurse like their friends, and mainly my mother, right? It's like, oh, so-and-so's mother, so-and-so's child is a registered nurse. You need to be a registered nurse. You know what I'm saying? So it also felt like no matter what I did in life, it was never good enough. But now, for the first time in my entire adult life, I have a partner in my life that supports my endeavors. I could tell him I'm starting a company selling soil, and he'll be like, that is awesome. How are we gonna do it? What does it look like? So it does something to you as well. And I believe that's also part of helping wean off the negativity and negative self-talk in my life as well. Knowing that I'm in a safe space and able to bounce back ideas and not being shut down for any idea that I have, and having continual support no matter what it looks like, right? Now, he's still not going to be the type of person that's going to have myself hanging out here looking crazy, right? He's not going to be like, oh yeah, so like DNA got left behind me. He will challenge me a little bit positively, right? So what does it look like? What are the numbers? Da kind of deal, right? So, and sometimes it doesn't always have to be a partner. It could be great friendships. It could be groups that could give you what you didn't get in your childhood, or what you feel like you need in this moment, right? Let's continue unpacking the origins of limited beliefs or limiting beliefs. Let's talk about significant life events. Perhaps you can examine any significant life events that may have contributed to the development of limiting beliefs, right? So for example, a failure or rejection could have led to the belief that you are not capable or worthy. Hands up, 2 hands up for me in my life. Got shut down for all my ideas, things that I wanted to do, how I wanted to do, things that I thought passionately and positive about. Whatever path and decision I tried to make, it was dubbed as not good enough, or compared to. It was always compared to someone else. So I never got direct affirmation of, oh, that's good. How you gonna do that, right? And I feel in life sometimes there's reasonable measure, right? There's reasonable measure and reasonable concern with people around you. Perhaps it's just not the adults in your life. Perhaps it's the circle of friends you have in your life, right, that are not rooting you on, that are actually dragging you down. Perhaps it's the people that you are exposed to on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes we have to prune and shake the tree, right? And so what does that look like for you? Also, what does failure or rejection look like for you? Between you and I had the hardest time with rejection for a long time, because it further confirmed all the self-negative talk that had happened to me in my life, in every other event that would have happened to me, where I was already feeling insecure about my intellect. I was already feeling secure and doubt about who I was as a person. And so getting any kind of rejection was a scary feeling, or even failing was a scary feeling, because then it also further confirmed to me that this low vibrational being in my life was right, saying that perhaps I should have explored being a doctor, because that's the reason why everything is failing. Perhaps I should have done what they told me to do when they compared me to other people, because that's the reason why I'm failing. That's why I always bounced it back. So once again, that negative self-talk is dangerous. We need to watch that. I came a long way, and I still have to continually remind myself. So what does failure look like to you, or rejection look like to you, as it pertains to limiting beliefs? I know that it was a realm and is a realm where at one point in time where definitely I felt unworthy. Like when I got rejected, I'm like, I knew it. And just setting myself up for failure, right? Because I'm already going in with the preconceived notion. So that's the other thing, that's limiting belief of its own. So let's keep talking about the origins of limiting beliefs, right? We talked a little bit about societal at the very start of the conversation, but let's talk about cultural and societal influences, right? So I gave an example for my life of early stages, formative, impressionable. These are formative and impressionable stages of life, where society dubbed me, as just not smart. So what are your cultural and societal influences, right? So I think sometimes we tend to overlook also cultural. We want to consider the broader cultural and societal influences that have shaped your beliefs. So this can include family beliefs and societal expectations. We talked briefly in the last couple parts about that. We could talk about media influences. Y'all stay off social media. 85% of that stuff is all cap. Okay? Or cultural norms. So let's reflect on how these influences may have impacted us, our mindset, and or created our limiting beliefs, right? We talked a lot about family beliefs earlier on and now. What do your family beliefs look like? I think in one of the parts I gave an example. We live in a society where, granted, our desire is to make our family proud, right? We want them to see us and be proud of us. But sometimes we are met with a conflicting situation. Perhaps the way I live my life right now is not pleasing or agreeable with my family belief, and therefore you become, secretive and closeted in who you are as a person, instead of flourishing in and thriving in your true self, because you still want to really make your family proud because of the family beliefs. So what are some of the limiting beliefs that you could look at, or the origins of limiting beliefs that you could look at as it pertains to family beliefs, right? Perhaps it's the pressure to get married, but you don't see your life as a person that needs to get married, or you don't desire marriage. But everyone in your family is married, and that's the expectation, that's the belief. So what does that look like for you? And so therefore, perhaps you're pursuing relationships, and those relationships are not working out, and you're looking at yourself like, I know my family was right. Maybe I just need to get married because, what I'm trying to do for myself is not working out. Perhaps it's an attraction to the same sex person, and maybe your family beliefs are not there. And so now you're trying to maintain a lifestyle on the side, trying to please the family beliefs at the same time, while you're dishonoring your true self, right? So how does that look like for you? It's one thing to take family beliefs into consideration, but it's another thing to also grab onto your true authentic self and live your life to its full abundance, right? So I could tell you, for me, family and cultural norms played a strong thing. The expectation of who I was supposed to be, how I was groomed from a very young age for domestication to marriage to a traditional man, traditional meaning cultural, in which I denounced and renounced, and I was like, I'm good. I'm not. As a little girl, I was like, I'm gonna learn how to make all these big dishes and big pots and cook all of this stuff and be domesticated, know how to clean a house and all that stuff. But I shall not be sold into marriage. This just wasn't, like, for me as a little girl. Now that part, I was like, I was all the way good. So for the person that maybe struggled with, how do I know if I'm good? Listen, follow your heart. Oh, trust and believe. It then came to a point as an adult where I realized no matter what I do, if I wasn't an immigrant to the United States of America, I would run for president and become the president of the United States of America, and it still wouldn't be good enough for the adults in my life. I realized that at some point in time, you gotta make amends with some things. I was like, you know what, I'm good. So I started doing me for the most part, and I've had so much freedom and liberty. So much freedom and liberty. 100%. Because I realized I cannot live other people's lives. At some point in time, all the negative talk, all the negative doubt that is placed over your life by your circle of people, friends, loved ones, and so forth, it weighs heavy on you. I couldn't take it anymore. I wanted to live for myself. So I chose myself. And I love that I chose myself because I'm living in the journey to my true, authentic self. Like, F y'all. I don't care what y'all say. I love y'all too, but this is my life. Because let me tell you something. I realized if I marry who they want me to marry, if I live the life they want me to live, naturally, there's different events, but naturally, order of events, they're gonna die before I die. And I'm be stuck with the life they wanted for me, and they're well gone. I'm gonna be stuck with a person they wanted for me, and they're gonna be well gone, and I'm gonna be miserable. I refuse to choose misery. I refuse. I know that it sounds like what I'm saying is easier said than done, but trust and believe, it took some time to really consider myself in this equation. It took some time and a lot of thought to stick up for myself. It wasn't overnight. At some point in time, you gotta choose you, boo. You gotta choose you. Especially if it is to the least favorable of your choices in terms of people around you are continuously low vibrational, negative, and they don't mean you well. They're not here for your betterment. So it's time to choose you. Now, there are people in our circle that love us regardless and just really are rooting for us, and they think what they're saying upon our lives is to protect us because they love us. But then it's still a point in time for you, honey, to decide what you want to do with your life, to make a decision for yourself that will benefit you and your outcome. And when you make you listen, I learned to live, learned by the way, not overnight process, but I learned to say, look, if I'm not happy, I don't want it. I don't want to do things. I'm done. When you're talking about family and cultural norms, I give you a double whammy on that. Yeah, I could keep that. I don't want it. I want to be happy in who I am. So let's continue to talk about culture and societal influences. Let's talk about societal expectations, right? We talked a little bit about that in the last conversations in one of the parts. We're still exploring the origins of limiting beliefs. We're now talking about some of the things, or bullet points on some of the things that can add as origins to our limiting and limited beliefs. Life is not a one-size-fits-all, right? So perhaps someone grew up in an amazing childhood, amazing family ecosystem, but now you're at this cusp of societal expectations. What society expects of you. Choose yourself is what I always say. Choose yourself. I would join together societal expectations and media influences. I stopped watching certain things a long time ago, and it has been the most freeing freedom I've ever had. I tend to watch my interactions on social media because I realized a long time ago too, the majority of that stuff is cap. It's cap, right? So talk about trying to keep up with the Joneses, and you find out the Joneses ain't even the Joneses, right? So sometimes, and one thing I realized about things such as media, so let's say social media influences or societal expectations and so forth, at the grand scheme of things, people will present their best sides and their best efforts always, right? And so here's the moment where I always talk about social media. I realized when I was in my darkest moment in my life and I was scrolling up that Instagram that I had to start deactivating and taking the apps off my phone, because it started to create a certain spirit in me that I didn't like, because I was really in a dark, sunken place at that moment in time in my life. But I'm looking at people putting on all these pictures and on the yachts and all these places and destinations. I want to travel the world too, and it started putting me in a situation I didn't like. And not only that, I remember let me show you something. Let me tell you how social media go. I remember a person that was an acquaintance, and I would see her social media. She's in Africa, she's in Zimbabwe, she's in Dubai, she's traveling, globe-trotting. I'm like, dang, this is dope. One day I want to do that. Calls me up maybe 2 weeks after, just BC, all over the states too, California, LA, all these places, just traveling. Catches up with me on the phone, tells me that she has been laid off and she's just been traveling and hanging out. And I'm like, what? Maxing out credit cards. And that's why I always say, question. My day ones know my saying. My day ones know what we say. Question everything with a question. And also, social media taught me not to ever envy or crave or admire or want what other people have, because you don't know what it is they truly have and don't have. You just see from a picture or a 30-second, 60-second video, and you think that everything is hunky-dory. But we don't know. We don't know, right? We don't know what we don't know. So don't get pressured by society. Don't get pressured by social media or TV shows, media influences, and so forth, right? Don't put yourself in those situations. Just know what you know for yourself and go forward with that, right? Because sometimes it can feel like there's a lot of pressure. Listen, some societal expectations, perhaps everything has always been amazing, right? And so sometimes societal expectations can look like you in a certain age group, but your peers are doing certain, right? So, all my peers that are in my age group are doing well. They're excelling. They're living their dream life. And look at me. By this age, I should also be on the same page with them. It breeds room for discontentment, right? That's why I try to shield myself away from it and understand that some of these things are all cap. I think I gave y'all an example in one of the podcasts. You could probably Google this. It wasn't too long ago where a social media influencer, I think it was TikTok, who had amassed so many followers through her travel vlogs, was exposed for photoshopping. So sis wasn't even going to exotic places. Sis say, forget that. I'm finna Photoshop. Excuse me, it's not funny. I'm not laughing at her. I'm just saying this is where we at in society, is what I'm laughing at. She just said, I'm gonna make a travel vlog and just Photoshop myself at all these destinations. So therefore, we question everything with a question. Don't live your life to societal expectations, F media influences, F social media. Hey, listen, we love family. We love our culture. We love everything about it. Let's take all the good qualities, all the positivity from it. Let's take that and let it grow us. But you don't have to, as an adult that's 18 and above, hold on to what the negative, low vibrational advice and information that family beliefs or cultural norms hold for you. You can make a decision for yourself, because at the end of the day, it is you who is living in this life. At the end of the day, it is you. And that's how I started living. It is me. It is me who is living in this life. It is me that is responsible to asking myself, when I'm over there dying or dead, did you live your life to the fullest of your own capability? And did you enjoy yourself while you lived your life? Not saying, I wish I never listened to so-and-so. I could have married John instead of Francois from my culture because that's who I really wanted. I went to college with John. He was my soulmate. He was my soul partner. And he and I were destined to be together. Not this person that family members said would be a good fit. He's so horrible. He's low vibrational. He's negative. He's abusive. And yet I knew this person I went to college with would have treated me well with respect, love, and dignity. He would have been the perfect partner. At the end of the day, who are you trying to please? Please yourself. Choose you. Choose you. I need a shirt that says choose you. All right. So think about culture and societal influences. Think about how they have played in the origins of your limiting beliefs or limited beliefs, right? Let's go into the next bullet point. Let's talk about role models and authority figures. Have y'all ever met someone perhaps you always wanted to meet, or that, let's say, perhaps you admired, right? Perhaps a role model, perhaps an authority figure, only to be turned off on everything you thought or had a perception about? Because sometimes it's all cap too. I'm just saying, today it's all cap. All right, so let's think about the role models and authority figures you have in your life or in your circle of influence. Were they supportive or critical? Meaning, aka low vibrational, high vibrational. Because low vibrational just deplete you, take you out, just not worthy, wondering why they're even a role model or an authority figure in your life. Or supportive, high vibrational, you know, keep you on your toes, help you positively. Would you say their attitudes and beliefs may have influenced your own? I think I've had moments like this in my life where I've met people, and a lot of people in my life that were influential, only to realize as time went on that we didn't really quite share the same beliefs, but I tended to lean towards their beliefs because I really liked the person. They were an authority figure / also a role model. So sometimes it becomes a point where you have to question your own self and question what you believe and how you believe in it. And if you believe in it strongly, to stand on your own, to have respect for your role model and authority figure, but for you to know exactly who you are. It's always key. If we go back to our day one Decoding Dream podcast episodes, we talk about really getting to the nooks and cranny of finding out who it is you really are. Right? So think about that. Think about role models and authority figures. You know, I realize sometimes when in a climate and a culture that is celebrity driven, we could be at the cusp of just really gravitating to anything that is so popular and that is so exciting that sometimes we may have a conflict in morals and ethics and so forth, but because that's a popular role model, authority figure, we just want to be right there with them. You got to ask yourself, are you betraying yourself or dishonoring yourself just to have that moment? What does that look like? The one rule of life I'm starting to live by, as well as I learn myself further, because of my foundation and the impartation of negativity and critical judgment that never served me any good. I've realized that I don't care who it is, role model, authority figure, I don't care who it is that comes within my circle of influence. I'm just not dishonoring myself anymore by allowing low vibrational energy just to gut and ridicule and just deplete me. Now I will welcome everyone and everything that builds me, that motivates me, that inspires me, that is positive, that is high vibrational, right? That we can positively impact and influence each other. It's a choice I have consciously made, because in a society where we're continually meeting people, whether it be role models or authority figures or people we aspire to be, you realize that some people could take you back to the things that you're trying to escape, and it's not worth it. I have realized that firsthand as an adult. It is not worth it. Been there, done that, past that, got the t-shirt for that, and don't ever want it. Because if I want all of that, if I want all of that low vibrational stuff, I just know where to go. I have a whole reservoir. I know where to go tapping at. You know what I'm saying? I know where to go. I know where it's found. If I want to hear how bad I'm doing in life and how I could be like so-and-so's daughter, how I could be doing this and doing that instead of what I'm doing, if I need all of that low vibrational energy, I know exactly where to go get it. So what am I doing? Pairing myself up with people that are going to remind me of a past that I'm trying to leave in the past. You know, you don't deserve my present or my future. Like, bye. All right, let's talk about the last bulletin point: fear and trauma. OMG, it just feels like everything is coming full circle. All right, so we are talking about exploring the origins of limiting beliefs or limited beliefs. And our last bullet point is fear and trauma. Traumatic experiences or fears can also contribute to the formation of limiting beliefs. Examine any past traumas, fears, or negative experiences that may have shaped your beliefs about yourself and the world. See, this last bullet point encompasses everything we've been talking about in this part so far. For those that have gone through traumatic events such as myself, right? I have noticed within my life and through the many decades that I keep turning and becoming an adult. I'm still trying to become an adult because adulting is something else, child. But let's talk about it. I noticed that within so much work that I was living my life in flight or fight and survival mode. Spirit laid it on me. I had the biggest epiphany of all, because how this came to my realization was that it never matters what moment, what time, what period, what season we are in. I'm continually wanting the next. I get to work, I'm ready to go home. And I'm not ready to go home like, all right, yeah. No, I'm literally like, I get to work, I'm like, I gotta go home. Like I realize my life is consistent. Like, I need to be in the moment. Well, I realized that my life was just consistent of next. Like a horse with blinders, head down. Okay, I got that, now next. Like, I'm not savoring the moment. Spirit illuminated that to my soul. I am not savoring the moment. I am not living in the moment, because since I was young, through my adult life, I have lived in survival mode. And I was like, it's not sustainable. It's burning out my lamp. So I need to sit, I need to breathe. I know the work thing, because my husband says, when I told him that the last time, he was like, yeah, I've been ready to go home too. And I was like, no, you don't feel it. I'm like literally not in that moment, right? So what I've challenged myself to do is, when I get to work, I sit in the moment. I don't think about going home later on, because that's a guarantee for the most part. So I take each and every patient that I have that day and sit within that moment. Stop being so mechanical. Stop being so repetitive, and sit within that moment. And it's been really fun. It's been fun, because I realized, because I was like, oh my gosh, I have. And then because it's like, listen, and I'm not talking about making 4-year plans, 6 months goals, 3 months goals or plans, right? But I'm talking about, I'm always living for the, like, I realize I'm rushing. Like, I'm not living like today's today, and I'm thinking already, okay, tomorrow I need to do this, to that. No. We know what we need to do tomorrow. It's set in stone. Chill out. Live within this moment. Smell the roses is what I'm challenging myself to do. Because I realized through all the traumas I went through, I never got coping mechanisms, though I'm in continual therapy, of switching off the survival mode. I'm safe now. So I have to talk to that little inner child and tell her, we're safe now, we good. So live every day, enjoy every day is one of my challenges in life. Stop living like you're in fight or flight. So family, we have bonded today, have we not? Right? We're exploring the origins of limiting beliefs. And I don't want to leave this as is, but you my day ones know I haven't done a disclaimer in a long time. Y'all know I was a disclaimer queen for the longest time, right? I have shared with you my journey, some of my journey. among a lot of events that have happened, right? We all have stories. I always feel sometimes in the society, and there's not societal pressures or influences, but I just like to do a disclaimer, that people can jump into misconstrued notions about other people's experiences. I have done the work and I continue to do the work. I'm seeking forgiveness for everything because I'm not perfect. I'm still a person. Seeking forgiveness as an adult for everything that has happened to me in my childhood. And as I continue to grow spiritually, I'm hopeful that forgiveness arrives. Yeah, I've heard the speech that forgiveness is for yourself and blah, 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 blah. Listen, I'm the type of person that understands myself, that when it's time, it unpacks itself, and it just happens naturally. So I'm allowing myself that process, to process all these things. I don't harbor hate or anger to the adults in my life for the pain, hurt, and harm that they inflicted upon me. I'm an adult and I understand that people operate sometimes from a place of or sometimes from a place where they think they know best, or also perhaps they operate from a place where they don't know any better. I have afforded the adults in my life grace enough to know that my father's father died when he was 15, and he was a boy child raised in a village with a mother who had lots of children, 9 or something like that, and whose father was a polygamist who had 3 wives, and my father's mother was one of the 3 wives, right? So I can only imagine that dichotomy, right? I can only imagine that situation. Okay, I have afforded my mother enough grace to understand she operates from who she can only operate from, right? Which is, she as well was raised in a village. Her mother was also a 3rd wife to a man who was a polygamist. So we're talking about a lot of siblings galore, right? I can only imagine the dysfunction and the weirdness of it all, and trying to share this one father for both of my mother and my father. I have put myself in those shoes to understand that, to have enough grace, to afford enough grace and compassion. I'm not naive to the fact that my mother was a young teenager who ran from her village to survive her life, to run into the city life because of the guerrilla warfare that was happening in our country. Because had she not done that, she could have been either a victim to the vicious crimes of the guerrilla soldiers, and or being forced to fight a war that she was not adult enough to fight, but safety was found within the city. So I'm not naive to understand that they have stories of their own, and that she sought her safety as a teenager in a big city. I can imagine the cultural shift and change from one place to another. As a teenager, you leave home and you're now in this big city, and you got to fit and fight for yourself. These are stories they have never ever really wanted to talk about to us, and I understand perhaps they also hold hurts and pain of their own, because everyone has a story. I shared with you today my experiences. I still have grace for them and compassion. At the same time, I'm still an adult and a human being to understand that some behavior was unacceptable, unequivocally unacceptable. And I can only hope and wish the best, right, for every single human being on this planet. But what I do have control over in my life as an adult is my life. I'm responsible for myself now, and how I move, how I breathe, how I have my being. I've accepted that fate. And all I do and try to do is aspire to be authentically myself through this journey. I am not saying all of this to gaslight anyone that perhaps has suffered at the hands of someone they love the most. I am not saying this to dismiss your emotions, your feelings at the hands of anyone that may have caused physical, mental, emotional, psychological hurt. I am just saying this as a part of where I am in life. What you do with your life is what you do with your life. I do always encourage therapy. You know that we do that here. And I do always encourage resources. Those have been beneficial and helpful to me. And I don't ask you to gaslight yourself or to harbor monsters that have caused harm and danger to you. But find liberation in freeing yourself and understanding that as long as you're 18 and above and it's not gaslighting, finding the resources, heck, sometimes also calling out these people. Do what you want to. Look, I'm not here to give you advice. Do what you feel is right for yourself. But I'm just here to say, stay the course. Take care of yourself. Take care of your inner child. You know, I had to come to that means that, you know what, at 35, I look myself in the mirror. I look my soul deep into my eyes and said, baby girl, we're taking care of us from now on. I'm not going to let the things and the events that have happened in my childhood hinder who I am and who I become and where I'm going. I'm going to use them as a resource to help other people to advance myself in a positive way and to always hold on to positivity, because I never want to take one of my best qualities that I know I have is having compassion and grace for people. Having compassion and grace and understanding that we don't all come from the same path, the same walk. We don't all see the things the same way. But the only thing that I know I have control over is my life and who I become and who I am. And heck, sometimes control is also just a speaking point, because do we really have control? Control in air quotes, right? But if I lean into the universe and let life happen, I know that it will happen. Completely surrender the things that are seen and unseen to the universe. All I want to aspire to be is just a human being that's good to other human beings. I know that hurt in life and pain in life can turn people into different versions of themselves that they never thought they would ever see themselves. We could sit up here and talk about that on another episode, but we're not going to compare traumas, and we're not going to, you know what I mean? But I could tell you that I thought I'd try to do everything, numb my pain through addiction, try to do everything that I thought I wanted to do, and even try to exit myself 3 times, and it failed, and here I am. I have to be here for a greater purpose than I have ever thought I would be. So I refuse to let and allow my past experiences define who I am today and tomorrow. But I choose to learn on how to start to live life differently and positively, and to move forward, and definitely take notes on, okay, what can I do better? You know, how can I do better? And we're not going to go down that road, because quiet is kept between you and I. But for the relationship that was super dysfunctional among the adults in my life, it taught me how to be a better discerner in terms of relationships and future spouses. It taught me to develop a solid list of what I don't want and what I wanted. And what I didn't want for myself was to create another generational pattern to where it's infused with two addicted substance abuse people that are angry at each other, that are at each other's throats. It taught me to want different out of life. It taught me to choose and pick a spouse that will be good for me, that will be positive for me, because I rejected what I grew up in and what I saw. So sometimes life happens, and it happens for lessons, and I'm not saying that the bad things that happened to you were a lesson. Don't misconstrue that. Another disclaimer. I am just saying I am living this life every day and learning lessons. I love you all so much. And we want to understand that in this part 3, exploring the origins. English is my second language. Exploring the origins of limiting beliefs You can gain a deeper understanding of how they came to be. And you can start challenging their validity. Remember, the process may be emotionally challenging. So self-compassion and support from trusted individuals can be helpful along the way. I love you all so much, and I know over the last 2 years we may have gained some new people, and perhaps you're listening in new today, but I also always say, among question everything with a question, is when you tell your stories or share your stories, please be sure that you're in a safe space where people don't further hype up the villain in your story. So always make sure you're in a safe space. I love you all so much. Therapy, continual therapy. Okay? I got a therapist on speed dial. I got a psychic on speed dial. I got a tarot card reader on speed dial. I got who else? I'm just teasing. But I do have a therapist. Get you a therapist. All right. I love y'all so much. Thank you so much for listening. Hey, let's do a plug-in. We are learning this entrepreneurship. 2024, we're going to be entrepreneurs. Okay, or solopreneur. Okay, solopreneur. Okay, listen, www.mbmosley.com. That's M-O-S as in Sam, L-E-Y. www.mbmosley.com. Family, remember, I am now proactively putting the information we talk about on our podcast on the blog over there. So if you want a printable document, or if you want something to go read, you could go check it out on the blog on my website. Also, you could check out the books that I am selling on the website. I have journals. I have the Shadow Work Journal, Self-Love Journal, and I will be publishing a couple more journals that I'm currently working on right now that I think will be very beneficial. And when I format these journals and create these journals, I'm creating them from a space of the things that have helped me over the years. Over the years, when I became sober, I started to read a lot and write. And I started to formulate all my writing in journals. Journals have always been something that has always helped me tell my story, because something about life, I know at a particular point, I felt alone. I felt like no one would ever understand, especially the things that I went through in life. And because we live in a society where castigating or even talking about the adults in our life can be frowned upon, let alone a mother. So for years I held in all this information, but I would feel free to write it on paper, write it in book format, because it's the only way I could get my emotions off and really feel relieved about most of the pain, most of the traumas, and all of this stuff that has happened. So go check it out, www.mbmosley.com. At the bottom of the website is the TikTok. It's the only way I know how to guide you guys to my TikTok. For real. Like, I've been on TikTok, I think since August this year or something like that. I don't know how to I'm like, which one is my handle? I'm so confused. But you could click on my webpage, you could click at the bottom of the link to the TikTok. You can check out TikTok. I love my TikTok presence because it allows me to be able to autograph books live and kind of give shout outs to people we also sell a few journals on the TikTok, so it also allows me to shout out to the people that purchase the journals on TikTok. So it's a whole vibe. TikTok, I love y'all. TikTok, I love y'all. I see y'all. TikTok is nothing but love. Fam, I was scared to get on TikTok for the longest time. Because I was like, I don't know how to dance. Now I know how to dance. I'm just kidding. But I was like, I don't know how to do TikToks. How y'all do TikToks, So this year was the year I went on TikTok, and TikTok showed me love. So I appreciate TikTok. Shout out to all my TikTok day ones. And also on TikTok, I have continued to do my motivational corner on TikTok. So it's little motivational quotes and wonderful messages on that TikTok page. Love you all so much.